In this video, I'll show you how I paint undead mummies. Hello everyone, and welcome to another brushstroke painting guide, where this time I'm going to show you the steps I took for painting this undead mummy for my HeroQuest 2 project. So what's HeroQuest 2? Well, I got bored of waiting for Hasbro to release a new version of HeroQuest after 25 years, so I decided I was going to revamp my version with some awesome miniatures I found from Zealot Miniatures. I've added a link to the description below, so if you want to check out the full range, then please do. They are absolutely awesome. Now, interestingly, since I've started this project, Hasbro have actually pulled their finger out and they started a crowd-funded version for a new official version of HeroQuest, which actually looks really good. So I'm not so keen on the miniatures. I think the Zealot miniatures are actually better sculpts, but if you don't have an original set like I do and you do want to get a full set of the game, then that's definitely something worth checking out. Now, one last thing before we start painting, as usual, I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone who has supported and subscribed to the channel so far. You guys are great. If you're new to the channel or you've not subscribed yet, then please do hit that subscribe button and don't forget the notification bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video. Okay, so let's make a start on painting, and the first thing is I've primed the model with some Vallejo surface primer. If you'd like to know the exact details on how I prepare and prime my models, then please click this link above. And the first painting step now is I'm going to base coat all of the bandages on the mummy with some THAR brown from scale 75. Now, you don't need to be particularly neat at this stage. The key bit really is to make sure that you get your paint on nice and clean and smooth. And for that, I've added a touch of water and I've thinned it down a little bit. Because of this, it does make the paint slightly thinner and that will make it more see-through. So you may need to add a couple of coats to make sure you get a nice solid finish. But do make sure that you work the paint into all of these little creases and crevices, so make sure you get a nice even coverage. Okay, so now we've got a good base coat on all the bandages. I'm now going to apply a dry brush of a lighter colour just to pick out those edges. And for this, I'm actually going to do a soft dry brush using a makeup brush. And the reason for this is it actually gives a less chalky finish because the bristles are a lot softer. And the colour I'm going to use for this dry brush is MOJAVE White from scale 75. Now what I've done is I've worked the paint into all the bristles by brushing against some tissue paper. This also takes off all the excess paint and just leaves very little left in the brush. And now using a flicking motion from top to bottom, I'm just working my way around the model, and this will pick out all of the raised edges of the model and give a sort of natural highlight to all of the model. For the next step, I want to deepen the shadows and definition of all the bandages, and for this I'm going to apply a shade wash all over the bandages with soft tone from the Army Painter. Now, there's no real technique to this. All you're looking to do is get a nice even coverage across all of the bandages and make sure that you work the shade into all of the creases and recesses, which is where you want the shadows to be. Okay, so now I've left the shade for about half an hour to dry fully before moving on to the next step, and you'll notice the bandages are now nice and dark and shadowed. And now I'm just going to pick out some of those higher edges again with a light dry brush of THAR brown from scale 75. So now we've got all the messy dry brushing out the way, it's time to start picking out some of the details on the model. And we're going to start off with the skin tone, and for this I'm going to start with a base coat of ARTIC blue from scale 75. Again, just to help the paint flow nice and cleanly from the brush, I've added a touch of water, and you want to take extra care now just to make sure you get nice clean edges when you're painting up against the bandages. For this colour, because it's quite pale and transparent, I will be adding 2 coats to get a nice solid finish. Okay, so for the next step, I'm going to add some shade and colour now to the skin tone, and for this I'm going to apply a wash from Vallejo called Flesh Wash. For this step, you're looking just really to apply it nice and lightly. Don't go too heavy at all. The idea is that you just want it to pull slightly in the recesses and give that sort of warm red tinge, but you don't want to go so heavy that it actually makes the skin look bright pink. Just as we did with the previous wash, do make sure that you allow this to fully dry before moving on to the next step. Because this is quite a light application, you probably only need to wait between 10-15 minutes. Moving on now to painting in all of the gold details, including this ring on the finger. And for this, I'm going to base coat with Regency Gold from DARKSTAR Miniatures. Again, this is one of those steps where you do need to try and be as clean and neat as possible, so do take your time. I've thinned the gold down just as before with a touch of water, just so that it goes on nice and clean and smooth, but that does mean that I will need to add multiple coats to ensure that I get a solid finish. For the next step, I wanted to give the jewellery a bit of an Egyptian feel, so I thought I'd add some blue inlay, and for this I'm going to pick out some details with some CANTABRIC blue from scale 75. As you can see, it was nigh on impossible not to get some blue where I didn't want it to be, so I just ensured that I got the blue in the recesses and then neatened everything back up again with some Regency Gold. With everything neatened up, I'm going to apply a shade wash now to all the gold areas, and for this I'm going to use AGRAX EARTHSHADE from Games Workshop. Just as with the flesh wash, this is quite a light application, and again we're just looking to add the shade so that it settles into the recesses of the gold areas. With that wash now fully dry, I'm going to apply an edge highlight to all of the gold jewellery's raised areas, and for this I'm going to use Antique Gold from DARKSTAR Miniatures. For this step, I'm looking to pick out all of the raised areas and details of the gold jewellery, leaving the darker shaded areas untouched. Edge highlighting can be quite tricky, and if you'd like some more tips and tricks on how to improve your edge highlighting, then please do check out this link above. As a finishing touch now to all of the gold jewellery, I'm just going to add one last edge highlight of Renaissance Gold from DARKSTAR Miniatures. All I'm looking to do for this step really is pick out those topmost edges which would catch the most light and would have the most glint. For the next step, I'm going to paint in the teeth and claw details on the Mini, and for this I'm going to use some RAKARTH flesh from Games Workshop. As always, I've added a touch of water just to help the paint flow nice and smoothly, but I've added a little bit more for when I'm painting the claw details because I want to have a transition from the skin colour down to the tip of the claw, and I'm applying the paint from root to tip so that it builds up a stronger colour towards the tip. Now, just to give the teeth a little bit more of a rotten, decaying look, I'm going to add a wash of AGRAX EARTHSHADE from Games Workshop. Okay, so while that wash is drying, I'm going to finish off the skin by adding a final highlight of Arctic Blue from scale 75. What I'm looking to do is pick out all these raised areas and the wrinkles and creases in the skin. As a final touch now to the teeth and claws, I'm just going to add an edge highlight of Pallid Witch Flesh from Games Workshop. There's just one more detail now to paint in on this mini, and that's these leather straps at the back. And for this I'm going to base coat that with some orange leather from scale 75. And then just to darken down those straps, I'm going to apply a wash of AGRAX EARTHSHADE. Now all that remains to be done is the base, and one of the really cool things about Zealot Miniatures is that they'll provide you with original HeroQuest style bases, but they're still a bit too plain, so I've just carved mine up a bit with my hobby craft knife just to give some interest and make them a bit more stone-like. And then I've primed them as I did with the model, and the next thing is to base coat it with some DAWNSTONE grey from Games Workshop. Nice and quick and simple, just apply an even coverage of DAWNSTONE across the whole of the base. With that base colour applied, it's now a case of adding a wash, and for this I'm going to use NULN oil from Games Workshop. Apply a generous amount of wash to the base, but not so much that it runs out of control. And as always, do be sure to give plenty of time for it to dry fully before moving on to the next step. And the next step is going to be dry brushing the whole of the base with some ADMINISTRATUM grey from Games Workshop. And then as a finishing touch, just apply a light dry brush of ULTHUAN grey from Games Workshop. And that's it, our mummy is now ready to endlessly wander those corridors of our dungeon. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, then please do give it a like and drop a comment below. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell to be told whenever I post another video. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.